today I'm going to be sharing another video full of techniques for using your Brusho colour crystal powders. These are a powder paint, very intense pigments from Colourcraft, and some of the colours are made up from different pigments so that when you add water you see almost like a fireworks starburst effect. But they're really good. The intense colours mean that you can play around and do lots of different things. I'll leave a link in the corner to the first video that I did using these great paints. And today we're going to try a few more techniques. So I'm going to be using 2 or 3 colours together. I just like the effect that you get by mixing them together. And I've got little holes in the caps. I can sprinkle a bit of powder out. You only need a tiny little bit. So I'm going to be using gamboge here, which is like an orange colour. And alizarin crimson, bit of red. And I've got rose red, different shade of red. And then I'm going to spritz with, this is just water in a spray bottle. And you see the brilliant colours that you get. So I'm using a mixed media paper here because obviously it's got to get quite wet. So watercolour paper, mixed media paper, they're all good. You don't want anything too thin because you'll find it'll buckle too much. So while this paint is wet, I'm going to use a stamp. This is just a text stamp. This one's by Visible Image. And I'm going to basically dip it into the paint and move it across just to add a bit extra detail into my background. Just going to go in with my heat tool. I'm just going to go actually into a bit of this red that's on the mat and add a bit of extra detail down in that corner there. And it's just a nice way of extending that colour across and giving a bit of extra dimension to the background. So I'll put that aside to dry completely and turn that into a finished piece shortly. Another good effect can be created by using a stencil. And I'm going to take this design, put it over my piece of card, and then sprinkle some Brushos through the stencil, and then spritz a little water to activate them. So this is turquoise, and I've got sea green, and I think we'll have cobalt blue as well. And once again, spritz the water to activate the colour. Now what you can do here is take a second piece of card, carefully lift your stencil off to reveal that lovely design. Just move that out of the way. Flip your stencil over and create a negative of that design by lightly pressing down onto your card. So if you see the two side by side. Again, brilliant start to a project. We'll dry that off. So I really like the effect that you get from both of those, and I'll come back with a finished project using both of those again at the end. Another thing that you can do with these is to apply them to your craft mat with a bit of water and then smoosh your cardstock in there as you would with distress inks or things like that. So I'm going to take the yellow ochre, sprinkle just a tiny little bit, and some olive green, spritz a little water, take, this time it's some ATC size pieces, and dip it in. So if you wanted a more intense colour, apply more pigment and less water. And you can build up some really good layered effects. The quicker that you can get your card dabbed into this paint, you'll see the different colours, and the longer you leave it, they'll have blended. But again, two interesting backgrounds that I'll come back with as finished ATCs later. And for my final technique, I'm going to do basically a reverse resist. Normally with a resist, you would stamp and emboss a design onto this card first, then apply the colour and wipe away the colour that's sitting on the embossing powder. This time I'm going to put the colour on first and then use a clear embossed image and then take away from around that. So for this one, I think we'll try the pinks and oranges again. So the alizarin crimson, and rose red, and gamboge. Spritz with water. I'm going to dry that with my heat tool. Just going to buff away the excess there. Now if you don't like waste, you can dip into this that's on the mat with another piece of card. I know a lot of people don't like to watch me wiping this up. There'll also be those of you that will take these pieces of mop-up cloth and turn those into a nice background as well. So these need to be completely dry for us to do the stamping and embossing, otherwise the embossing powder is going to stick everywhere. So I'll just wait until these are dry and I'll get my stamps ready. Right, so my brushos are dry now. I've got another stamp here, another visible image stamp. This technique will work well with a fairly solid design. So I've chosen the silhouette of the ballerina, and on the other one I think I'm going to use some of these chunky words. So I'm going to ink my stamp up with Versamark ink, which is a clear ink. And stamp it on some piece of coloured card here. I've got some clear embossing powder, giant tub of clear embossing powder. So you can see there where it's stuck to my stamped image. I'm just going to melt this with my heat tool. Once that's all gone clear and shiny, we know it's melted. Just allow that to cool for a second. And we're going to take a piece of wet towel, spritz some water on here. And lift out some of the colour from around the stamped image. As the water reactivates the colour, we're able to remove some of it, but the embossing powder preserves the colour that's underneath that. And we're left with this really nice effect. So I'll go ahead and I'll finish the other one and add a little bit more detail to this and share the finished products with you at the end.